Hey, this is David. Today we're going to show you how to fix an electric Kenmore dryer that won't run. There are a few reasons why this could happen, like a faulty door switch, a defective motor, a bad timer, or even a tripped thermal fuse. Let's work to figure out what's going wrong so we can fix it step by step. Before we get started, hit those like and subscribe buttons if you want to join our repair community and get notified each time we post a new video guide. With over 2 million products in stock and the know-how to help you do it yourself, we are AppliancePartsPros.com. The first thing we need to do is get our tools together. Today, we'll need a putty knife, a 1/4-inch nut driver, a 1/4-inch socket, a multimeter, and a Torx 20 bit. And please remember that safety comes first. Always disconnect your dryer by unplugging it or switching the breaker off. Now let's get started. Let's start with the most common failure that can prevent a dryer from running, and that's the thermal fuse. The thermal fuse will open if the air leaving the drum is too hot. This is typically caused by a venting issue where the air can't leave the drum. So make sure to check and clean out your venting system if the thermal fuse is open. We need to open the door and remove the lint screen. We need to use a putty knife and push in on the 2 clips that hold the front panel in place, then we can remove it. Then use your 1/4-inch nut driver to remove the screws holding the blower housing cover. You should be able to see the white thermal fuse on the top of the blower housing, and it should have 2 light blue wires going to it. Let's remove one of the wires, and with your multimeter set for continuity, use the probes to check across the 2 terminals. If there's no continuity, then the fuse is defective and would need to be replaced. If you get continuity, you'll need to move on to the next step. Our next check is the mechanical timer. Let's take a look at it to see if the switch in the timer is closed and allowing voltage to go to the motor circuit. To get to the timer, which is in the console, you'll need to use your putty knife to push in on the 2 clips that hold the console in place. Then push the console upward and back. Take a look at the contacts marked BLK and BU. Next, turn your dryer to a setting where it would normally be running. If you use the multimeter probes to test the contacts here, the meter should read closed or continuity. If the switch is open so you don't get continuity, then the timer is defective and needs to be replaced. Next up is the door switch. To access the door switch, we'll need to use a 1/4-inch nut driver to remove the top panel. You should be able to see the switch on the left side, and you'll also have access to the connector, which you can separate. Now you'll need to use your multimeter set to continuity to check the 2 pins going to the switch. There should be continuity with the door closed. If there's no continuity, the switch will need to be replaced. You can also tell if the switch is bad by looking inside the door to see if the tab that contacts the door is broken or missing. Our next check is the drive motor. Let's find the yellow wire that attaches to the bottom of the front panel and remove it. Next, remove the door springs on either side. Then remove the 2 1/4-inch screws at the bottom of the front panel. Once that's done, you'll need to get the Torx 20 bit and remove the 2 screws at the top of the outer door panel. Then we can disconnect the door switch and the front panel should lift right off. We need to reach underneath and release the drum belt from the idler pulley. Then use the belt to lift the drum up and out. This gives you plenty of room to get to the motor connections. You'll need to set your multimeter to the AC voltage setting and put one probe in the motor switch labeled 4M and the other in the 5M. We're about to check the voltage here, but before we turn the dryer back on, make sure the door switch is connected to test the drive motor. You'll also need to engage the belt switch so that it's closed. And just a heads up, since the dryer needs to be plugged in and powered on for this test, Please be very careful to protect yourself from electric shock, which has the potential to cause serious injuries. Don't ever test live voltage if you're uncomfortable using a multimeter. When you're ready, turn the breaker back on or plug the dryer back in. After you do that, press the push to start switch. You should get a reading of 120 volts AC at this point. If the voltage is good and the motor doesn't start, you'll need to replace the motor. After checking our dryer, we found out that the thermal fuse was open. This is the most common thing that can prevent a dryer from starting. Rarely does a belt switch or push to start switch fail. If you had the same problem with your unit, let's get to the thermal fuse and I'll show you how easy it is to replace it. Let's start by making sure the dryer is unplugged or the breaker is turned off. You'll need to remove the two wires and then use the 1/4-inch socket to remove the single screw so you can slide the fuse out. Here's the old thermal fuse and here's the new one. If you've already got one, great. If not, you can pick one up at AppliancePartsPros.com. Now we're ready to install the new fuse and secure it with a single screw. Once that's done, we can attach the wires. Finally, we can install the drum and the drum belt and the front panel. Make sure the door switch is connected. Next up is the blower housing, door springs, and yellow wire. Once you put the bottom cover back in place, you can open the door and insert the lint screen and replace the top panel. Once you secure the console, you're done. Don't forget to plug the dryer back in or flip the circuit breaker back on. And don't forget to check your vent. Like I mentioned earlier, poor ventilation is the main reason for a failed thermal fuse. If your dryer takes longer than normal to dry your laundry, or if you notice that the clothes are wet and steamy after a normal cycle, you should pull the dryer out from the wall, put a normal load of wet clothes in, remove the vent off the back, and run a load of clothes. If the clothes dry in a normal length of time, the problem is with the vent and not the dryer. If the problem continues, then there is an issue with the dryer. Simple enough. Once you found the faulty part, whether it was the thermal fuse or something else, grab your model number and head over to AppliancePartsPros.com to order a replacement, which should arrive in just a few days. After you get your new part, we'll walk you through the installation with our video guides. Share your repair experiences with us by leaving a comment below. And before you wander off, hit the like and subscribe buttons to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.